Welcome everybody, I'm Santiago Kneeland and this is The Divine Within, the invisible connection with God. Today we're going to talk about celestial and extraterrestrial beings. We're going to explore the mysterious bridge between heaven and earth, the realm of celestial and extraterrestrial beings. From Midwayers and Morontia worlds to the unseen helpers who guide planetary life, we'll uncover how these divine presences shape our history and individual spiritual evolution. Joining us is Susan Lyon, an author, artist, and poet whose lifelong search for truth has illuminated the beauty and order of creation. Through her spiritual journey, Susan invites us to see beyond the visible, to perceive the intricate web connecting all beings across time, space, and eternity. So welcome, Susan. It's a pleasure having you again.
Thank you, Santiago. It's fun to be here. I enjoy it.
Thank you. So this time we're going to kind of follow up on what we were talking about, the heavenly governments in our previous podcast. But this time, and since everybody's, kind of getting new information about this 3-eye atlas and the new things popping up in the different hearings. So everybody, it's kind of a fad right now. So I wanted to set this recording this podcast to talk a little bit about these celestial and extraterrestrial beings and have your take on how they work, on who are they, and how they relate to us. So I think it's a pretty interesting topic. So in our first segment, we're going to talk about celestial and extraterrestrial beings, Midwayers and Morontia. We open the door to the unseen. Who are the Midwayers? Those beings who move between material and spiritual worlds? We'll explore how these interdimensional helpers, along with the Morontia entities, reveal a larger picture of existence, one where life continues beyond matter, guided divine coordination and purpose. So what can you tell us about these celestial or out-of-this-world beings? There's different things, I think there's a lot of, we need a lot of time to break them down, but what about these celestial beings? Can you tell us a bit about them?
We do need a little time to sort them out, don't we? Um, I,
Yes.
I will say that this is an interesting thing calling them interdimensional beings because that was even mentioned recently in one of the secret meetings, the skiffs in the United States government hearings, that
Mhm.
they weren't really sure they were from another planet, but that they were dimensional beings. So to start off with, on our planet, we have native beings that are generally outside of our vision range. They're called midwayers. There are two groups. The older group that date from the times of the planetary prince.
Okay.
This are basically their parents that were created by what they called a non-sexual liaison. They
Okay.
were created by that technique, and there were 50,000 of them. They were really near to the angels in their status. They were definitely outside of our vision range, and they were very helpful for a long time. Almost 40,000 of them were lost in the rebellion. They
Okay.
went to the dark side. So there are still near to 10,000 that are loyal beings that still remain on our planet that are very helpful behind the scenes with our invisible government.
Okay.
The more recent group date from the times of 38,000 years ago when Adam and Eve lived here. Their oldest son, Adamson, and his second wife created them, um, and they were more easily visible to us. They could make themselves visible to us because they're closer to us in their being and their status.
Okay.
So anyway, they work really closely with us as well. There were almost 2,000 of them created, and only 1,111 of them remain loyal on the planet.
Okay.
So now these two groups of beings, midwayers, have united and they work together with the invisible planetary government.
Okay.
And they work with human beings to help us um, achieve that divine will, the government that we talked about in the earlier podcast.
Okay.
They are
So
native to this planet and permanent citizens here.
they stay here. Okay. So this is what I wanted to kind of differentiate them from us because I think it's interesting. A lot of people. There's a lot of references that people can understand them, because I think a lot of them it's the first time that they hear this word midwayer. So let's dive deeper into the differences between them and us, humans. So one of the things I believe, or one of the differences is, and this is in the creation of the different creatures, and we're going to be talking about more, but we come from the second source, and correct me if I'm wrong. We come from the sun, which is the second source. We as humans, and we are ascending sons of God, meaning that we start here on Earth, and we have a progression of steps to go into paradise and into the center, which is to achieve, the final embrace with God. That's who we are, and that's our purpose. Then you have these beings who come from the third source, of the Trinity, which is the eternal Spirit, the Holy Spirit, and the nature. And I don't want to. I mean, we see duality and polarity in physical or human terms as female and male, but I mean, let's not just dive into that distinction, but there's a different, there's polarities, and these is a different nature than that of the second source, of the creatures of the second source, which is us. The third source is more of the natural beings, the beings, like you're saying, they stay here on this planet, and people might consider them as the spirits of the forest, all these mystical creatures that we all kind of into and see in legends and fairy tales, and every in all cultures, that they're not celestial in a way. They're not coming from heaven, and they're not angels, but they have a certain mission, and they're here to do a certain job to achieve that ultimate destiny, which is to fulfill the will of God. So it's an interesting take of that, where they come from, what their job is, and their nature. And this, I think, is something that people may understand and see where we are with, when we compare ourselves with them, right?
Right. So to sort this out, I would say we are categorized, even though, as you say, we have different polarities, we have different energy, what we call gender here, but we'll have that energy basically
Mm-hmm.
all the way, into eternity.
Exactly.
When we're classified, as you say, under the suns, we are considered ascending suns.
Mm-hmm.
That means when we either die or translate, as Elijah or Enoch did from the
Yeah.
planet, when we leave, we assume our role, in the heavens as ascending suns, even though we have different spirit, either passive or aggressive types of beings.
Mm-hmm.
So the daughters of God are the angels. That's what, as you say, under the infinite spirit. Those are considered daughters of God, and those are all creation through the infinite spirit.
Because it's interesting, once you start to see where the origin is, and the nature of that origin, then you can understand why they have certain jobs or missions, right?
Right. Now, these midwayers that we spoke of, they stay on the planet until the ages of light and life. They're the permanent record keepers here. This is truly their world, and they keep the history, and they're the ones that know actually where this comes from, that we get this information. And actually, when the days of light and life occur, they're actually released to become ascending suns like us. So
Okay.
those spirits would actually go through the same path as we do to paradise, to meet God. So they have a future destiny that's pretty great also. Now,
Yeah.
these other third group that you speak of, I think they fall into what we would call the unrevealed. And we're told that all the beings that are revealed to us have some connection to our future destiny.
Okay.
But there is a group, they say, that live near us, that they do not betray or reveal to us. So
Yes.
I think that third group that you talk about, they have no connection to our future destiny. However, they're sharing the planet with us, possibly.
Okay.
They're doing their own thing. We don't know their purpose. But we can only assume they're harmless, and
Yeah.
and we have no fear of them.
And
But
they're probably doing certain jobs, or creating certain balance, because that's the purpose of the different things that we do, how we interact. It's create that balance, right?
right, exactly. You and I have even speculated that there's all kinds of vegetable life on the planet that we see there must be some intelligence. And we feel that there could be connection with the adjutant mind spirits. And we don't know actually what's going on with them. And it's not really pertinent to our destiny or our spiritual growth, even though I think we feel an affinity to certain plant life, like trees. And, people just seem to love those things. And they really balance our life out. They produce the air that we need to breathe, and we produce the air that they need to breathe. So we're
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know,
It's a
rock, rock.
symbiosis. Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
perfect balance. Yeah.
right. Exactly.
So, I mean, we're talking about the Midwayers, which is an interesting group of creatures, beings. But now, if you expand into what we're talking about, the celestial and extraterrestrial beings, and we'd start to talk about, angels and extraterrestrial beings, because you think of angels and you see them more in a celestial way, more godly like. But then you talk about ETs, and that's more techie and more sci-fi, and then what's your take on these two beings, or how are they related? Or how? I mean, what other kinds of beings are they out there beyond the angels?
I use the term celestial for spirit.
Okay.
That's how I keep this categorized in my mind. Okay, we are terrestrial. We are from this planet. We're mortal. That's one of the things that I think that they asked in these hearings. Was it human? They're like, no, it wasn't human. Well, do they mean is it human from here or human from another planet? So we're gonna break out the truth and say there is life in other worlds, and they're human.
Mm-hmm.
And human will
Human-like, let's say, like we're the mortal beings of the earth are humans, but there's other mortal beings in other worlds that maybe are called what other name? Local, right?
I mean, whatever it is, they have the ability to know and worship God,
Exactly.
and capability of developing wisdom from that spiritual insight. That's what qualifies us, that we call human will
Mm-hmm.
dignity. And on other worlds, otherwise you're an animal, right?
Yeah.
You haven't reached that capability of connecting with the spirit. On other worlds, they have animals. They also have beings that are human will dignity that we will call human. Now, they won't necessarily look exactly like we do because they're designed for their planet, just
Exactly.
like we're designed to be comfortable on our planet.
According to the temperature, to the pressure, I mean the physical qualities, that's just simple science.
Exactly. So when I use the word extraterrestrial, I'm talking about someone that's a human will dignity from another planet.
Okay, that's a good
That's the
definition.
way I classify them.
Okay.
And then, of course, on other worlds, they will probably go through their normal phase of, because in our DNA, all of this is designed. This isn't accidental.
Yeah.
Out in time and space, God creates through designed evolution. That's in the design, there is normal, sudden mutations built into the design.
Okay.
That's sometimes when these changes take place that move us forward, and then we
Exactly.
become
It's you don't know, but there's a mechanism that it's involuntary, just like as you breathe or your heart beats. It just works, and that's the same thing. It just moves you forward, right?
exactly. And it's a nurtured process. There are celestial beings we call life carriers that nurture and guard this life until human will dignity appears. And then they are observers after that, because free will is the gift we get from God, actually. And that's universal. That's for all planets.
So it's interesting what you're saying, and in this conversation you've been mentioning, these beings called life carriers that in a way create material life and kind of steer it in an evolutionary path, from basic material to it evolves into a higher evolutionary or organic phase. But you're also talking about Adam and Eve, and that kind of isn't that contradictory? You're talking about kind of a evolution, theory of evolution, and then Adam and Eve. So how can you explain this? And that's what we're going to be talking later on. But what are these beings, these other beings that you're talking about, midwayers, and these are Adam and Eve humans? Where do they come from?
Well, I think that they fall into the category of superhuman. These are beings that have come from basically the heavens, They were divine creatures that came here. Adam and Eve came here at a certain stage in our evolutionary process where we were the original race, actually, that evolved was more like what we would consider an Eskimo look like. They were all swarthy skin color. They had black hair, black eyes. That was the beings that were here. Now we're talking long ago that these evolved almost a million years ago. And it's a lot longer than we realize. We have a history of the world, but that's the truth. It's forgotten, but we know it to be true. 500,000 years ago, this original race separated into 6 different races from one family. It was extraordinary. In the universe, it's extraordinary that that would happen. So we have this unusual story going on where we really are, when we say we spiritually want to be brothers and sisters, what we really don't realize is that we all come from the same family in the first place. All the races. It is totally an interesting story, but the colored races evolve on all the worlds. Usually one at a time they emerge from the original race. But in our case, 500,000 years ago, all of them emerged from one family. And at that time, the planetary prince arrived. And he arrived with a staff because he's invisible. He doesn't make himself, he isn't able to make himself visible to us, but except under circumstances when he was loyal, a power director would help him make himself visible. That wouldn't happen now because no loyal power director would do that. They wouldn't work with him in that regard. So that would never happen. But anyway, so his staff created the original group of midwayers. They were volunteers. Now, this is interesting too, because they had been mortals from other worlds that had died and gone on and become citizens of our first stage training after death. And they volunteered to come back to serve on this planet for an indefinite amount of time, long term, to work with the new planetary prince on this world. 50 men, 50 women. They were given a complement that would allow them through the tree of life to live indefinitely. So we put them in the supernatural category. They had special powers, and they created the Midwayers, the original group of Midwayers.
And
And
well, just hold that up, because this is, I mean, and I want to save this because it's a lot of information for a third segment, which is going to be on the history of the world, because this is something that you hear a lot in myth, a lot in, ancient, the lost history of the earth. You hear about these giants, about these superhuman beings, and it's everywhere. It's not only in one culture. So I think that this is a very interesting take on who these beings are, that they really existed and they did really have a purpose here, other than just being mortal humans like we were, but like we are. But anyways, we're gonna close this segment, which is pretty interesting. This was a very good introduction into the variety of different celestial and extraterrestrial beings that are out there, and how they interact. On the Divine Within podcast, we'll share real conversations to help you find a personal connection with God. My goal is to support your faith, growth, and journey toward discovering the divine within yourself. Join us to deepen your faith and spiritual journey.